just based on who we are and the degree to which we've involved ourselves up till now, we do have some ownership of this situation.
Gaza's our problem. Why do our troops have to be there? Why can't the Tunisians or someone fucking do it? Like, why the fuck do we have to do it?
I don't love the idea of us going in, but I'm not sure that we have any options other than that. And I think the Tunisians should be in there. I think other people should be in there. And
It's supposed to be the UN.
I think some of the headlines about this have been a little bit misleading because they have talked about U.S. troops on the ground. Those have been the headlines when really, if you read into the article, what it says is you will get a UN peacekeeping force that will have U.S. troops as, while the White House...
Why does it have to be... Why do we have to do it? We're peacekeeping every fucking where else. Why the fuck do we have to do the Gaza Strip? I don't understand that. Hi, everybody. This is John Koenig back with Real Veteran News, here with my good old friend Charles Seal, also known as Chuck sometimes.
Chuck works. I use Charles a lot, but Chuck works.
So Chuck or Charles, as the situation warrants. It's his first time on Real Veteran News, and he has not been on the older show, which is called Unauthorized Media. So this is our first time doing video together, which is great. And we're all leading up to trying to do the 4-way video concept, but we have to get kind of like more people in the mix so I can do scheduling. We're on track for that. Now, Chuck, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. Enlisted in the Army for about 5 years in the early 2000s. I was a part of the Iraq invasion, and I was back for sustainment and stability operations. I was an Arabic linguist, did kind of intel stuff and translation. After that, I joined the State Department, and I was in cybersecurity there for quite a while. Recently, I've been doing cybersecurity consulting and kind of traveling the world.
Great. Chuck is a really great cybersecurity mind, and I learned a lot from you and during those times and everything. And being a cyber trained professional has been good. It's a little paranoia inducing, but it's, these are the skills that we need, especially, military needs them. It's changed a lot. We got cyber command. Would you like to introduce yourself, a little bit more, like ideologically, like what kind of, viewpoints do you have, I guess, that you want to share?
I'm super liberal for sure, far to the left. What I would definitely say is I often think that there's a little bit too much focus on a left and a right dynamic, and people tend to take on positions relative to that. I think my background is slightly different from many, staunch liberals. I served in the military. I invaded Iraq. I, have done a number of things that are not common tasks for people on my side of the aisle. And I think that has also helped give me a different perspective from a lot of those other folks. I think it allows me to look at situations with a more critical eye sometimes than others and really form my own opinions. I've got some world experience that I think a lot of people don't have, regardless of your political views. When I look at issues, form my own opinions about things and not simply take, the sort of common party view on one side or the other, which I think happens too frequently now. A lot of people simply digest the opinions that are given to them, don't critically think about the information in front of them.
There's different viewpoints on things. People can see the same event or the same situation from a different perspective. People involved in different situations can forget about things. And you can be in a situation with somebody and two people remember the same event totally differently, because that's just how our human brains work. Because when we're storing it in our hard drive back there, for one person, this is important, and one person, that is important. There's not some kind of common memory and coding language. And so then you get these people, and both people think that they know. And especially as time goes on, we get into like older memories, and we start forgetting stuff. So it's just part of being human. But it's good that you're approaching things independently, skeptically. Everybody that I've been discussing the news on here with is the same and shares that with you. We're kind of skeptical. We want to be informed, do analysis, and try to figure out what the right answer is, and not just jump on with everybody else, to pound this person or you ridicule this person, or if we don't have anything unique to offer, then what's the point? It's like one of these situations was like a shooting or this or that, and everyone has to go online and post their take on it or whatever. And everyone just has to get their junk out there. But it's like most people think the same thing, or you're just on one side of a split issue situation. And it just sucks, but social media is fueling that, and we got to deal with it. Are you in an animal hospital right now?
Oh, man, can you hear them? All right, so there are these 4 kittens that we found on the street. Somebody had left them on the street. So if they're making noise, I'll have to get them up and
you're gonna have to kill them, dude. If I hear one more fucking kitten, they're dead. I'm just kidding. We don't kill kittens anymore. I'm just kidding. The kittens are fine for now. All right, let's start with the news then. Now that we've gotten to know you. First interesting article, not a lot of people talking about, but it is this rumor online is that Putin is already dead, that he died. They're saying he died on October 26th. The story that I was tracking from this is it came from a Russian Telegram channel, which is kind of anti-war Russian Telegram channel called General SVR. There's another guy named Valery Solovey, who's an analyst, part of these Democrat people in Russia. And they might be the same. He might be the channel and the guy, but whatever. This rumor came out and it doesn't seem to be going away yet. And they haven't really kind of like proven that he's alive, but they also don't want to be like, we have to prove that he's alive. They kind of want to resist against that. But eventually we're going to have to see him. They're saying that they're using his body doubles because this man has body doubles. These guys are super paranoid. They have body doubles. So he already has guys that look like him, and he's had plastic surgery on them, and they make him look like him. So they already have a couple of these guys. Putin's obviously going to die. There's obviously plans in place. Like when he dies, there's some sort of plan, like get the red folder or whatever, and they're implementing some kind of plan. I still haven't decided on if I think he's actually dead or not or whatever, but I mean, whether he's dead now or not, at some point he will die, and there will be something like this, and it'll all be internal Russian stuff that somebody will pop out, I guess, right?
I kind of feel the same way as you. I'm not quite sure what to think about this yet, but then that's to be expected, right? I think even people who have spent a career focusing on Russia aren't quite sure what to make of this. I think the fact that you don't really see it in very many legitimate Western sources tells me that folks are not believing there's too much credibility there. I'm not sure what the motivation of the Kremlin would be at this point to like absolutely hide his death. I mean, I guess there could be a stability issue, but I mean, the wrangling for control of Russia is going to be within that political elite. I don't think there's going to be because of Putin's death. I think that's a political elite issue. Don't see kind of the motivation for hiding it. I think there are a couple possibilities. The Russian government is always difficult to figure out, but you certainly could have this almost being, floating this out to see what happens, right? The Kremlin tries to get this information out there just to see what's going on. I think that's one possibility. How do folks react? What do people say and think?
Going down into more of like what I actually think is happening, and I'm just surmising this, is I don't think it's a binary question if he's alive or he's dead. I think he's in between somewhere, right? This dude's fucked up. We've all seen pictures of him. We've seen him since we were younger. He looked good when he was younger. He kind of looks like shit now. He launched this war kind of impetuously. So it's like his clock was ticking. I don't see why they would put out this rumor. It doesn't do anything for them. You know what I mean? I don't see why they would put it out unless it's impending, like his impending death. They want to kind of like set the stage for him to die. His doctors might be like, hey man, it could be 6 weeks, it could be 6 months, whatever. And it's a thugocracy. So they're probably trying to figure out who's who and everything. And there's still that power vacuum from Prigozhin being killed. And I think he's going to die, which is good. But it's like, what comes next? Whatever. I don't think he's dead already. I mean, do you really think he's dead right now? I don't think he's dead.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that makes a lot of sense. Just sort of easing into this, seeing how folks react, seeing what's going on as a rumor, getting people prepared for the idea that something like this is coming. Because I completely agree with you that it is clear to almost any observer that he's been declining recently and has had some really rough patches in terms of, how he looks in his public statements and things like that when he's standing at a podium, etc. He had some really rough issues recently that were clear to everybody.
Well, he's got good doctors, obviously, and unlimited resources. He's probably the richest man in Europe. His body is only going to last as long as it's going to last. They're saying he has Parkinson's, but I think that can be severe or light. So it might be like a light Parkinson's. Supposedly they're saying he had treatment for cancer in 22 recently. And the stress, he's in the middle of the fight of his life. He's gone through so much and, he's probably just a stress ball right now. And that will kill you. That will fucking kill you because you can't sleep. You probably can't take a shit in the morning. His life sucks. Well, it doesn't probably suck because he's fucking Russian ballerinas every night. But I don't know. But I think he's going to die. Yes, sometime.
I think that makes a ton of sense. I think we're on the same page here. He is going to die, but he is not dead yet. This rumor does not make a lot of sense. But again, it's always very difficult to figure out what's going on inside Russia. Nobody has a good idea. That's by design. They're putting out a lot of false information all the time and trying to shape the narrative, dramatically. So who knows?
Yeah. This is going to be a totally different country. They've lost so many men, been so disrupted and set back. They probably got set back maybe 20 years. The military getting set back probably 10 years or more. The entire invasion force has been turned over. Like all those guys are basically had been wounded out or, got their legs blown off and they're in the hospital somewhere. So, it's getting into attrition. I didn't really include this in here, but, we have the Congress problems. Just talking about the war a little bit more. We have the Congress problems. They're not giving up the money right now. They might give up the money. Zelensky's being like, sugar daddy's probably going to, cut soon. And so we're going into the winter, obviously. It's going to be tough on both sides. But if we cut the money, then Russia has the advantage again. But then Putin's sick, or what happens? And what happens next year? What are they going to fight with next year? I mean, they're not going to have any bullets left. They're shooting like thousands of rounds of artillery ammunition every day.
To me, this is cutting the funding for this. The United States cutting the funding for this would be one of the dumbest decisions we can make. I feel like this is a fantastic investment. We are degrading one of our primary global adversaries. We are doing it without risking any U.S. lives.
We are getting money. Off. You have to admit we're getting ripped off. Like, they're fucking picking our pocket.
While we may be paying a little bit more than we should, right? What is another thing that we are doing in the back of this, right? We are giving them our old weapons. We are replenishing those stocks with brand new, up-to-date weapons, up-to-date machinery. We are modernizing at the same time as we are funding them, providing them with munitions. A lot of people are getting rich, and that's absolutely true. But I feel like at this point, we all have to understand that stuff kind of comes with, it's going to happen no matter what, right? Would you like to enrich people and at the same time take our secondary global adversary down a whole bunch of pegs so that they could be easier to deal with in the future if that ever becomes a reality, or that they know not to rattle again? We're getting a great benefit out of it, and we are doing it relatively cheaply considering what we're getting. I'm not saying it's cheap. It's a very expensive war for us, but considering what we are getting and we have almost zero risk in terms of U.S. lives, I think it's great for us.
People are risking their lives in Ukraine, obviously. We have people who got wounded over there, but we're not drastically exposed. We're not going to have 13. I'll just say that. We're not going to have 13. It'll be 1 or 2. So it's just a different situation. If it's successful, it's a great investment. Now, we do have risk. There's different types of risks, right? Putin could panic. He could tell some Russian officer to shoot off some nukes in Europe, or, start some nuke thing with us. Or he could die, and then the next guy's 10 times fucking worse than him. So that could be a problem too. But if he dies and all of a sudden everything's peachy and Moscow is all Democrat now and we're all vacationing in St. Petersburg and stuff, I mean, that would be cool, obviously. But that's not going to fucking happen. That's not realistic. So it's somewhere in between. We'll see what happens, I guess. Biden supposedly is having these secret talks trying to figure out a UN force or whatever to do Gaza. They're saying no U.S. troops, but I mean, really, nobody believes that. And then there's people reporting this, saying behind the scenes, they basically know that U.S. troops are going to be in Gaza doing peacekeeping in Gaza after Israel flattens them. That's going to even further not only put our people at risk, and I mean, remember Beirut and the embassy and everything up, Lebanon and other attacks that we've had. But it's like, we're going to be like wearing this on our sleeve for the next 30 fucking years. I mean, it's just, we're going to be marching around policing Gaza for the Israelis. I mean, this is crazy.
It's a really, really difficult problem because you look at the humanitarian aspects and you feel almost a need to get involved in order to help people on both sides, right? You have violence on both sides. You have humanitarian issues on both sides as a result of that. However, is this something we want to be saddled with? Is this the right thing for us? I think fundamentally it's really easy to say, no, the U.S. doesn't want to be involved in this. We do not want to be saddled with the burden of dealing with this issue in the Middle East, taking it on and having some level of ownership of it. In a lot of ways, we're kind of already in the position, just based on who we are and the degree to which we've involved ourselves up till now. We do have some ownership of this situation.
Gaza's our problem. Why do our troops have to be there? Why can't the Tunisians or someone fucking do it? Like, why the fuck do we have to do it?
I don't love the idea of us going in, but I'm not sure that we have any options other than that. And I think the Tunisians should be in there. I think other people should be in there. And I do.
It's supposed to be the UN.
I think some of the headlines about this have been a little bit misleading because they have talked about U.S. troops on the ground. Those have been the headlines when really, if you read into the article, what it says is you will get a UN peacekeeping force that will have U.S. troops as. No. I mean, while the White House.
Why does it have to be? Why do we have to do it? We're peacekeeping every fucking where else. Why the fuck do we have to do the Gaza Strip? I don't understand that.
Fundamentally, I do agree with you. But I will also say that as the world superpower and the one that has the largest military, we are in so many ways a guarantor of stability in the world and a guarantor of stability for a long time in the Middle East, although we have absolutely done the opposite for the most part for a while now. But I think we view ourselves and the world views us as a guarantor of stability. And as a result of that role in the world, we take on that level of responsibility. I don't think I like it, but I will say I do like the fact as an American that we have by far the strongest strongest military, the most capable military, the one
For
that is
now.
looked to by everyone else, right? I like the fact that we don't have a bunch of people vying for, that title of being the strongest and most powerful country in the world. It is good for us, and it's good for our economic stability. It's good for our political stability. It's good for just general world order that is us right now, from our perspective at least.
What if we get overextended, when we're far flung all over the place? That's what always happens to these empires, like the Roman Empire, like when they got to Germany, they were like, all right, we're just going to stop here. Like, this is just, these people are crazy.
So we need to be cautious about exactly that problem. We need to think about the things that are truly in our strategic interest, or the things that have such a humanitarian draw that it's kind of impossible not to get involved, not to act. But we need to prioritize things. We can't do everything. 100% true. I think we do sometimes fall into the trap of thinking we can do everything. All of this is interconnected, right? It harkens back a bit to the issue with Ukraine. Are we dealing with Russia there without U.S. troops? And is that a good thing? Does it free folks up to do other things? Is this the thing it should be freeing folks up to do? I'm not sure if that's exactly true. Projecting our power in different ways is, I think, critically important, and using all the tools in our toolbox, everything from force to diplomacy to funding of groups, etc., but using them effectively and realizing what that can lead to in the future. I fully agree with you that if we have troops mired in peacekeeping in Gaza, we might never leave. Who knows what we create there? We look at the situation in Afghanistan and Iraq today, and that is certainly not what anyone in the United States envisioned when we went into those countries.
This is a failed state. Gaza's a failed state.
For sure.
It's like Somalia. We're going to go in there. I mean, plus it's just leveled. I mean, there's not going to be any habitable buildings left after this.
I guess the question is, though, from a humanitarian standpoint, do you step back and just leave it to Israel? Clearly is not in any sense operating in the interest of the civilians there, right? Now, do I think Israel does not have a right to self-defense? Absolutely not. They certainly do.
But what's self-defense?
They have a right to take actions against the folks who came after them. But you've got this giant civilian population in this tiny little area. These people did not have a democratic vote they have not had real say in their government for a very long time. And now they are being absolutely shelled. I mean, this is a miserable and difficult situation. And if we can do something to fix that, do we have some kind of moral imperative to do it? That is such a tough question to answer. I sort of feel like if we can manage it, this is one of those situations where there's a moral imperative to try to make a difference. But I'm worried very much, I think in the same way that you are, I'm worried that this is going to be even more difficult in the future than it is today. It has not gotten better at all, right? We are in a worse position than we were years ago. I think things have steadily declined into a worse and worse, less capable state, if you want to even call it that, for the Palestinians. That's now even bifurcated. The tensions between the two countries are obviously troubled. Israel is obviously, extremely concerned about their stability and their future because they failed to catch what was obviously the largest plot that Hamas has ever undertaken. So they are worried about their intelligence. They have internal issues. The situation is probably worse than it's ever been. Is that what we want to be in the middle of? No. But can we stand back and watch the situation deteriorate in the way that it is? I'm not sure if that's acceptable.
Why can't we just write a fucking check to the UN and be like, good luck, guys? And then they get, get some Muslim people in there. Send all these white boys up into Gaza City and shit. Like, the Australians shouldn't be going. Listen to that. Like, send the Egyptians, send, the Saudis. All these people have been talking all this shit about the Palestinians forever. Let them take fucking care of it. Let the Kuwaitis go up in there. Let them pay the fucking bills. Why the fuck are we doing this? And I actually think we are in a better position we used to be because most of the older generation died off. And the Palestinian and the Arab world is kind of like, well, it's new America. They had Obama. This is like popping back up. It had been down for years. So what's America going to do? What's this generation going to do? What's this president going to do? And we have Joe Biden, who can't leave the past. He just like slams down fully on Israel. But then the younger people, they're going crazy. We just had this big march in DC. So it's like old versus young, generational. And it's like we're caught in the mix. But it's like we are in a good position because we have this opportunity to handle the situation properly. And the Western, US, British, white people, all this shit that set this whole situation up and have fucked it up since the beginning and set these people on each other is essentially what our forefathers did. This is our chance to unfuck it. But unfortunately, we got Joe, who's too fucking old to do it. I think if Obama was president, he probably could do it. Trump could not, obviously, because he's super on Israel and he's just very hardline, tough guy or whatever. But somebody that could navigate, especially Obama because of his skin color and everything, somebody could have navigated this and like done the dance. Obama could have done the dance, but Joe can't. He just can't.
I think a couple of points on what you said. First of all, I don't have the same lack of faith in Joe Biden, but I do agree that he has approached this with a real legacy mindset. I think he has surrounded himself with some really strong people in general, and I do think he is willing to listen to other voices, but he certainly makes the final decisions, and he does have a different mindset than, the average young person who might come at this really differently. Other Arab countries have not done as much as they probably need to do to help with this problem.
No, they're shit talkers and they give terrorist money.
Yes, and they end up doing very little to actually solve the problem. You have all of these countries like Egypt. Jordan has done a pretty good job. Egypt, Saudi Arabia, others, UAE, that have taken in Palestinians but have not integrated them in the way.
They're not integratable. They've been living in refugee camp for decades.
Yeah, I think this is still in recent memory, right? As you said, some of these, the generation that sort of founded Israel and cast out the Palestinians is starting to die off. And so you've got a whole new sort of set of people and new ideas. But remember, this is still within cultural memory. This was their country. This was their place. They know where their house was. They are no longer able to access it. They are controlled on a day in and day out basis by this state. That's not changing. And so I think without concessions on the Israeli side, you're not going to make any progress. And it's really hard to say that this average Palestinian is supposed to look at Israel and side with them when they are absolutely being, on a day-to-day basis, their life is incredibly controlled. They have no freedom of movement. They do not have any jobs. The Arab world has not taken them in, has not integrated them. We could be in an entirely different place if you had a bunch of these neighboring countries that had taken it. As much as I'm not saying that they should have been cast out of their own homes. However, if you had these neighboring countries that had taken them in, taken responsibility in some sense for these other Arabs that had been displaced, we might have a different situation right now. Things might be operating entirely differently there.
But the example is when the Lebanese took them into southern Lebanon, then they turned it into a terrorist infrastructure, got Israel invading Lebanon and occupying Lebanon forever. They cause problems wherever they go. The Egyptians do not want them in the Sinai, and the Jordanians would prefer not to have them either. Nobody wants them. They're a huge problem.
So there's a difference between taking someone in and allowing them to set up a refugee camp in your state, right? And those are two separate problems. If you take them in and integrate them into your society, that is one thing. If you allow them to set up a refugee camp on the border with their former home, obviously you're going to get bigger problems coming from that, right? Those are two really different things to do. And I think the fact that so many of the Arab countries did not accept these refugees, stuff happens. Things go wrong geopolitically. How do you respond to that? Do you take in refugees? Do you create these giant camps of people? And if you're on the border,
taking refugees, you're taking in the radicals too, They don't want these fucking people in their fucking country with good reason, and yeah, they should have some land or their land or whatever, and it's all fucked up. But the fact of the matter is nobody wants them, and that's why they're stuck there.
I think it's important to remember that it's not everybody. There are the radicals. There are radicals in every population. And so it's important to remember that the average Palestinian is just like the average Israeli, is just like the average American, is just like the average
We're talking about 1 in 10,
Arabian.
though, that are radical.
So,
we're talking about 1 in 10 that are radical, probably.
Listen, that also comes from the way that they are treated, right? I think you can radicalize a population. And I think we both recognize that the U.S. is aware of this from our actions over, the last 2 decades. You can further radicalize a population. You can push people in a direction because of your actions. That's not a justification for it. There's no justification for it. None of this stuff should have happened. None of this violence is acceptable. But that's true on both sides. And if you're a young person who has no opportunity and is constantly undergoing adversities that you think are tied back to the actions of a particular actor, you are naturally going to come to resent that group. And you're going to start to side with someone. And that's just psychology. That's the way that things work. It is important to recognize the role that the rest of the world and Israel have in radicalizing people there. There's a reason why you have far more radicals in that population than in others. It's because of the opportunities available to them and the reasons that they think that that's the case.
What's politics, man? Everyone's got radicals. The Jews have radicals. We got radical left. We have radical right. France has radical left, radical right. Russia, everyone has radical. That's just, it's just like a statistical distribution of all of us and what we think and how radical we are. Moving on to UFOs. Are you interested in UFOs?
I think that it's something worth looking into. It would be hugely impactful to our broader, to human civilization if we discovered these UFOs were related to alien life forms. I also think that it is immediately relevant to us if this is technology, foreign technology, that could be useful to us, if these are things that we're unfamiliar with. Should we be worried about technologies that we don't know that other countries have? 100%, and we should be looking into that stuff. We need a program for that. That's UFOs. Should we be worried about whether or not, or interested, I should probably say, in whether or not there is alien life in the universe? Yes, also useful for us, but we end up going down a rabbit hole with all of this stuff, and most of the headlines end up being these weird, crazy things that are taken by like a second tier, third tier news agency because of the people who jump onto this to turn it into some weird conspiracy.
Well, I mean, this stuff's on 60 Minutes, too. So it's not only... And you have to admit that it has kicked up momentum. The government has admitted stuff. They've done hearings. Congress is on it. So it's definitely a different stage of the game. Going into the news on this, the first item of news on the UFOs really is that the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, the AARO, which is this UFO reconciliation unit that kind of sorts through all this shit, on their website, they've created a new form, and you can enter your information if you have worked on a top secret UFO cover-up program since 1945. And they say, we want to hear from you. I take this as we have no fucking idea what these people have done, and we don't even know what's going on. I think it's fine. I mean, I like the whistleblower thing. I mean, that's how these things get, people have to speak up about what happened. But there's obviously a lot of people out there that don't want this to bubble up right now. I would say that whoever's pulling the puppet strings on this shit is trying to make sure that it doesn't affect the 2024 election. Like, the only thing anyone gives a shit about is these masterful, powerful people all over the world care about is the 2024 election, because they sure as shit don't want fucking Trump again, and they want, obviously then they want Biden. But you throw one of these black swan events, or like, oh, there's aliens, or oh, we have an alien, or something like that, it can upend everything. That's what happened with the midterm election, is the Roe versus Wade thing came out, and then it just kind of upended everything, and then you didn't get the red wave. You got the puddle, or whatever the fuck it was. Do you trust them? Or if you are that person, you're like, oh yeah, we waxed all these farmers over the last 20 years because they saw UFOs and got butt probed by them. Do you want to admit that? Or do you trust the government? And maybe it's like a ploy, like the cops are trying to get you or something. I don't know.
Again, I don't know what to think about this. Like, I do think we have real programs out there. I am not sure that they actually have anything to do with alien life. I tend to think there's less sort of like puppet string action on something like this. I think you've got real programs designed to look into foreign technologies and unexplained things. I just fully don't believe that there is some massive cover-up. What I do think you find a lot of times is...
Wait, you don't think there's a cover-up? This is
the biggest
cover-up in the history of the world.
So
and you don't think it happens?
I do not think there is some massive...
You're a real company man, Charles Seal.
No, get out of here. Certainly, you're going to have a classified program. Like, what ends up... How does this stuff look?
Program?
You have a highly classified government program. We'll call it program because, right, for lack of a better way to describe it, you've got a government effort. It has highly classified components. Now, why is that? That's because you are building and developing your own advanced technologies. You are trying to discover the advanced technologies of other states. All of that stuff is going to be very, very classified. So then what happens when little drips and drabs and bits of that show up in the public? People naturally go to some kind of crazy, like, this is aliens, we've got crazy stuff happening, all of this mess, right? You can't say very much as the US government. You're being very cautious, and you come off as being quite cagey in your responses as a result of that. And then that fuels the fire of this being, we've got little green men, they're crashing in fields, they're like all over, we're doing autopsies of them. You get some of this,
they're green.
Like,
why you gotta bring race into it? Why you gotta bring skin color into it?
Well, I
honest debate.
Don't know. I hear they're green. People are saying they're green. I think what you find is this, to me, feels like probably legitimate U.S. government programs designed around technology, our own technology and foreign technology. Bits and pieces have spilled out. The government is really bad at responding to stuff when that sort of thing happens. That fuels the fire of conspiracy, and here we are, right? We must have aliens, agnostically skin-colored aliens, running around the United States, running around the world.
We've got aliens. Did you check out the whistleblower hearing, David Grush, a couple weeks ago?
Yes, yeah.
David Grush, who worked for one of these or he was a government employee, something like that. He's a whistleblower. He gave a closed hearing after the open hearing that we all saw. And the representative that said the most about what happened in the hearing was, I think he's new, Eric Burleson. I'm not sure where he's from. He said that most congressmen were disappointed in the meeting, but he did mention a new form of propulsion technology Grush claims the government is trying to reverse engineer. which obviously is like way better than ours. And he's saying it's in the experimental phase. What do you think if we start getting some of these alien technologies in our lives, allowing us to like go to Mars and back in like a week?
Gaining technology from this would obviously be the goal of any of these programs. Kind of like I was saying, right? I think if we are looking at these things with a critical eye, what is the government probably doing? They have created a program to try to capture technologies that we're unaware of. Do I think that they belong to extraterrestrial creatures? Personally, I fall on the no side. Do they belong to foreign governments? That seems like it could be much more likely. And I think that, yeah, there's real benefit in that, right? I think creating a program where the US government finds these crafts or finds these technologies in use somewhere unidentified around the earth, starts to reverse engineer those, make sense of how to integrate them into our own capabilities. That is fantastic. That's what they should be doing. And again, doesn't necessarily indicate that there are extraterrestrials running around in Arizona.
There's so many of these instances, like the USS George Washington, 2004, off the coast of California, where a big glowing ball is hovering, 100 feet off the flight deck for 4 hours in a row, and everybody on the fucking ship can see it. And the deck officer's like, all clear, and doesn't even write it in the log. But everybody saw it. Yes, most of it's bullshit, obviously. But like something is fucking happening. The idea is like, oh, why would they come now? Whatever's happening has always been happening. It's just like with the police brutality and stuff. Now we all have cell phones. So it's like, oh shit, that's what it looks like? The technology and everything, like we're getting better sensors. Everyone's got their cell phones. We're just going to get more and more pictures of these things. And it's just going to grow and grow and grow. You're kind of downplaying. I'm more believing in it. But Representative Burleson said, it's really frustrating because I can't say what was said, but I'll just say my viewpoint about the UAP phenomenon has not changed. My worldview of what we're seeing, what we're experiencing, is that it's likely U.S. experimental, whether it's from the private sector or being done through a black operation within the Department of Defense or Energy. I'll just say this. UFOs are not keeping me up at night. They weren't before. After this meeting, they weren't. That's what he said.
So far, we're not seeing anything that tells us that these are extraterrestrials. And I also think when you deal, again, with these highly classified programs, what are you going to get? You're going to get as designed, right? Compartmentalized information. You're going to get different people in the government who know different pieces of information, very little pieces, right? Somebody developing something is separated drastically from somebody researching these things and trying to put together pieces to figure out what's happening. And those two people never talk, but they're both seeing, one's finding the other one. And they may not be told that that's the case. So I do think this gets complicated because of the level of classification. That's intentional. Our adversaries are supposed to have trouble putting these pieces together. And so sometimes we do too. Some of this in the sort of public sphere, it gets complicated. How does the government put it back in a bottle? So let's say that what he is discussing are US technologies that we are funding and finding, right? Is there a really effective way to put that back in the bottle when the public has, and the media is like chomping at the bit to hear more about this information?
You say there's no evidence that you have aliens or that there's aliens or whatever. David Grush, who put on a fucking suit and went up to Capitol Hill and sat in front of Congress and all the television cameras in front of the whole fucking country and the whole world, answered questions and said that they had recovered alien bodies. I don't even know. I mean, I guess some of them might have been alive or what condition they're in or stuff like that. I mean, that's evidence of aliens. Like aliens' bodies is evidence of aliens. So David Grush, who he did work in these programs, that's been verified. You're basically calling him a fucking liar. You're saying you're just totally discounting that as evidence, right?
I am saying that I do not know what to make of what he said. This guy comes out and says this, and it has sort of disappeared. I don't know to what degree I can put faith in his statements. I don't know him. I can't stand behind his statements. He is saying something that is incredibly salacious. And you've got folks coming out, as you said, the last quote that you just used, folks coming out at a closed-door meeting where you would expect if he had truly seen alien bodies and is talking about that behind closed doors, the most salacious thing, the most amazing thing that was heard in that entire conversation would not be the existence of some propulsion technology that we don't entirely understand, right? So why did none of the senators come out and say, you will not believe what we heard behind closed doors, right? This is the stuff he can say in a public forum, and then in a private forum, he says nothing. To me, that doesn't totally add up.
This isn't the Board of Regents at MIT, okay? I mean, these are Congress people. It might just not have penetrated their skull or whatever.
You don't think the existence of alien life forms, I think that's going to penetrate their mind. That's going to penetrate their mind.
All they care about is winning their next election.
I do agree with you there. There's a heavy focus on that, but I do think if there was a discussion behind closed doors about more detail around alien life forms existing and being in the possession of the U.S. government, I do not think somebody would have come out of that closed door meeting and said, we learned a little bit about some propulsion technology we don't understand.
Some propulsion? Wait. Some propulsion technology.
I mean, he said, fundamentally, my view has not changed. I'm not having trouble sleeping at night. What I learned was there's a propulsion technology, and I'm underplaying it for sure. There's a propulsion technology that we don't understand, and we are now trying to reverse engineer that. Like,
it's like alien future tech.
That does not say to me we learned a tremendous amount about, the existence of extraterrestrial life, which I would expect to have heard more in a closed door meeting if this guy actually understood the existence of extraterrestrial life as he indicated in his public testimony.
Yes, that's incongruous. I get it. All right. Tommy Tuberville. Republicans are turning on him. They were criticizing him privately, trying to cajole him into approving all the officers and stuff. He's not back down. They got up and just like lambasted him whole day the other day. He sat there and took it and stood his ground. The Senate Democrats want to change the rules somehow, but they don't like doing that. But they're going to do it because they have to do it, right? I want to throw this out there for discussion, but basically my point of view on it is that they come up with all these bullshit excuses being like, oh, we can't let one person hold hostage and do all this. But really, what they do not want these generals going up one at a time and getting their records picked through. And that is the last thing they want, because those people are the apparatchiks that go up into the defense, that go up into the top levels of the military and then trickle out of there into the defense corporations. And it's this, you're touching on a system that they do not want you to fuck with. Because it's like working just how they want it. They got the guys they want. They got the bank accounts full of money. They got the wars. They got everything they fucking need. And they don't want to make any changes to that. The fact that these officers are getting blocked from getting promoted is fucking that up. But at the same time, they don't want to be able to pick through them. What they do is they lump them all together. They hide the desk chair wieners behind the special ops guys being like, oh, this guy's a hero. And then a couple more generals, and they filter them in, right? And it's like an infiltration operation. We have so many generals. They act like they're all these like barrel-chested freedom fighters, which is not true. And they just don't want it. So they're just trying to keep the system, and like, what are they going to do about this guy? Talking down to him because he's a football coach. That's not going to work.
Yeah, talking down to him for being, a football coach or something like that, I don't find that appropriate. But I do not like his actions. I think he is holding hostage an entire organization.
Do you think that all these military officers should just carte blanche be shuttled up the rung of the ladder by whoever the powers that be, whatever the list is, the Senate should just approve all of them unless they did a bunch of rapes or whatever?
So, no, I'm not saying that. And he's not raising individual objections. I think you're conflating two things. Your point can still be true, that we should have greater scrutiny on the individual officers being promoted into the general officer ranks, right? That is a fully valid point and one that I wouldn't necessarily object to. However, that is not what is going on here. That is not the stated point of Tuberville. He is saying that he is against the U.S. military paying for the costs of travel and medical expenses for abortions by military members who have to travel in order to accomplish that because of the overturning of Roe versus Wade. That has happened to 12 people over the course of the time that's existed, and he is holding up all of these promotions as a result of that. He is very clear that that is his stated and only purpose for this, that he has a moral objection. I'm not going to comment on whether I believe that that's true or not, or he's just trying to get attention. It could easily be either of those. I think we see that all the time in the Senate on both sides, people trying to get attention with things.
He's a football coach. He's fucking running a play. It's the old end around, loop-de-loop, Statue of Liberty shit, man. He's fucking you up. This man is a strategic, tactical thinker who has gone out on the football field and won against some of the smartest football coaches in the history of college or wherever the hell he was. And he is turning that against these old, dumb fucking senators and these old officers and shit like that. And yeah, he's talking about the abortion and stuff. That's popular in Alabama. He's going to win on that all day long. The point of attack, he's pissed off about the abortions. I'm pissed off about other stuff, whatever. But he hit them right at their pressure point, right?
You're saying that the two are somehow related, and I simply don't believe that. Does he have an effective tactic here? Is he forcing the discussion? Yes. But again, he's doing it over something that is really infinitesimal at that point. Like, I think if he wanted what you're saying, if his entire goal was to get more attention, more scrutiny onto the unique records of each individual candidate, then he would have pivoted to that by this point and saying that he thinks that that is important. If he were really concerned about this abortion thing, as he says, then we would be really talking to, for instance, I don't know, the candidate for Undersecretary for Policy in DOD, who would have great sway over this entire issue. This is not where we're doing it. He is simply holding things up. I feel like there's a degree to which he is certainly trying, and that's what politics is, but he is trying to get attention with this. I do not see him pivoting to making real change. I do not see him pivoting to looking at the individual record. He could put forward a proposal that we look at each one individually, right? And we move each one individually. I think that's moving toward a solution to get what you want, and that's not what I'm seeing happening here. I'm not seeing him move towards solutions. I'm just seeing him obstruct. To me, That's not a way to govern. And to me, I don't think that's a way to deal with the military. Obstruct, obstruct, obstruct. I think we have had over a long time. It doesn't always lead to good things, but we have recognized that the military is in some ways different from the rest of the government. We need to treat that organization with some level of special care. As you say, maybe that's led to some problems, things like putting forward large lists of candidates. At the same time, I would make the argument, do we want to see individual politically driven and motivated senators who you said earlier are only worried about their next election? Do we want those people picking through the records of career service members to make decisions about who should be promoted individually and not individually? I'm not sure that that's a good thing either. I'm not necessarily saying that they don't deserve the ability to dig in a little bit more. Could they object to an entire list and say there is a person on here, here's the thing that they did? For sure. Should those candidates go up individually? Should you have, as a general officer, should you assume that you have hundreds of bosses because you've got the people above you and all of these elected officials who you don't actually report to but hold dramatic sway over your promotions in your job? Should you be making political decisions so that you ensure you get your next promotion? That I'm not sure is good. So a degree of isolation from the political process is also really useful.
There's no isolation, dude. All the politicians, all the generals, all the defense corporations are all fucking eating steak together, all right? The idea that this guy wears a fucking funny military uniform, this guy has a suit, and this guy's here, and this guy, that's bullshit. There's a system here, and he's fucking it up. No one gives a fuck about these stupid abortions. Yeah, I mean, it's a grandstand issue as a politician or whatever, but there's a system at play here, and he's just exposing it by pushing on this pressure point. And I don't really know what's going to happen or whatever, but like, I don't give a shit. The military still works. Everything still works. Like, it doesn't fucking matter.
You know, it's working right now, but you do run into real problems. There are real problems at the top of any organization in U.S. government because of authorities around people acting in roles, having particular rank. In order to occupy particular slots, you have to have a certain rank. In order to be in a slot, like in order to perform certain functions, there are inherent functions to that role, sometimes congressionally mandated functions that can only be performed by that role. And at times, they cannot be performed by someone acting in that role. So you must hold a specific rank in order to occupy a slot and in order to perform certain, sometimes critical functions. You have to be confirmed into that role. That is important. While we haven't seen huge problems so far, that does not mean that they won't start to crop up if this is a thing that continues. Playing games around this is a problem, right? You can run into an issue where somebody is required to make a decision for the security of personnel and nobody is actually authorized to make that decision because the person in the position acting in that role because of a lack of promotion. Those are the long-term problems that we could run into. And I think it's important to recognize that they do exist and it's something, this should not continue, right? Okay.
Oh, we don't even need officers. Like, let's be real. We don't need officers. The system we have, we don't need. It all needs to be changed anyway. Being like, oh, we got to get the officers back in there. That doesn't matter because they're not doing anything anyway. They're just operating a system that is in place.
But we have those people. Those people do exist. The system does exist. So you can say we need to overhaul the system, but the system does exist, and it is the system that is protecting the United States right now, right?
Are we winning wars? I mean, how is it protecting us?
Well, I mean, I think that we're having this podcast instead of being controlled by Al-Qaeda. So I do think, to some degree, it is certainly working, right? We have freedom of speech to make this podcast, to have discussions, to disagree with the government, and those things are valuable. I value them. We have a level of stability that we would not have otherwise. That is because of our base reduction, man. That's because of our standing military, and I think it is important to recognize that we can't just like blow the thing up, right? I think if you want to make change, you want to make incremental change, that makes sense. We can look at what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. But if Congress built this system, which is really what we did, right? We have between Congress and the executive branch, we have built this system as it exists, then we need to be able to operate it. Right? We have a responsibility. They have a responsibility to us to operate that system effectively. And if it needs to be changed, they have a responsibility to us to change it. And that's not what's happening here. We are just blowing it up. And that to me is not, but it's corrupt, exists, right? Corruption is different from like dysfunction, is different from effectiveness. All of those things are like different elements.
The dumbest people have taken over. That's what has happened.
I think it is important. If we need to fix those things, then let's look at those problems. Let's fix those problems. Let's not just say we're going to blow up this thing that it's hard to prove the negative, right?
The problem is at the top.
What if the government didn't exist? What if the military didn't exist? You know, it's hard to prove that negative. I think we'd be much worse off if the military itself didn't exist. And while there are some problems in the senior ranks, there are problems at all levels, and there are problems at all levels.
There's not problems at all levels. There's not problem. What problem is there at the sergeant level?
You don't think that there are ineffective sergeants in the United States military?
That's not a serious. We're not losing wars because a couple sergeants are showing up late for duty or something.
But those issues are critical to the folks that work for that person. So yes, the cascading effects of somebody at a more senior level are going to be greater because they have huge impacts broadly across an organization. An E5 has minimal impacts. They impact in the tens of people at most at any given time. Certainly, it's not tens of thousands of hundreds of thousands of people at a time. So yeah, you're going to see greater effects from the generals. But there's ineffectiveness. And how do you think those generals got there? They moved through the ranks. They were also an ineffective captain. They were also an ineffective major.
All right. Okay. Well, let's coffee next time. All right. So, do you think the military is collapsing right now?
No, I don't believe the military.
You don't? We missed 15,000 people last year and, 10, 15, 12,000 last year. That's not a collapse?
You think the military is collapsing?
Yes.
Define collapsing for me, I guess.
It is imploding because the young people will not join. They're taking extraordinary measures to bonus people in, keep people in, stuff like that, around the edges to make the force work. They're decommissioning units. They're doing a 10% cut. They're cutting Green Berets. I mean, that is the definition of implosion. And it is not the fault of the E5. It is not the fault of the E6, the E7, the E anything. It is the O's at the top, and then their buddies that they went to West Point with, who went into the defense corporations and corrupted the whole system, jerked us all off for all of Afghanistan, and ruined the reputation of the military, and now the young people won't join. And I actually think that Gen Z is a great generation, and they are probably just smart enough to figure this out. If they would help protect us, we'd be way better off.
Okay, so I think in that sense, I'm not going to use the word collapsing, but I am going to say that there are real issues, certainly around recruitment and around retention. I would make the argument, it is important to remember, a way to help with recruitment and retention is not to show a person that as they reach the pinnacle of their career, they are going to be entirely held up by the decisions of the political process. Most people think of Congress as a fundamentally broken institution, right? That stuff doesn't get done. And if you start to think that as you progress through, if you're good, if you're smart, most people get into a career because they think they're going to move through the ranks, they're going to get to the top of the organization, they're going to have a great career. Now, if you think that the end state for you is being worried that one single senator who's worried about a cultural issue can hold up your promotion, that is probably not going to attract the top talent. It's not to say nobody's going to join.
We're not getting the top talent now. You think we're getting the top talent?
Right. So do we want to make that problem worse, or do we want to make that problem better?
I want to fix it, man.
I agree on that. I think it's important that we fix it, but I'm not sure that we fix it by further breaking an organization that, while it is not as effective as it needs to be, is performing a function for us. Is it too expensive? Yes. Does it do everything it needs to do? No. Is there dysfunction involved? Absolutely. But does it fundamentally secure the United States right now? Yes.
But if it's imploding, how long does it fundamentally secure for?
And so we go ahead and fix that. But I don't think making the problem worse is the way to solve it.
I'm not saying that Tara's solving anything. I'm just saying he's fucking with these officers and he's exposing at the top there this like nasty shit at the top. And they're freaking out. And I love it. And I just can't wait to see what happens next. This great opera. This next act. All right, let's talk about Joe Biden and AI. He has been clamping down on China getting the AI chips. There's the mobile chips, the AI chips. We're kind of talking about both, but kind of the AI chips right now. They did an executive order. I got this confused. He did an executive order regulating AI, but he also did an executive order blocking AI from China that was supposed to go in effect in 30 days. And so then NVIDIA, who's our big AI company, and it's a multinational company. This isn't an American company or whatever, but they're like, oh, you want to block all the chips to China? It's like, oh, we'll just take all these other chips that we've got and just send them to them now and would sell them $5 billion worth of chips in the next 30 days. It's a total sellout, you know what I mean? And turning against us. And, Americans have been customers of NVIDIA for a very long time. I've been playing video games with these chips and stuff and computers since I was a kid, and they shouldn't be doing this stuff. I understand selling the chips to China, but you know that the intent is that the U.S. government doesn't want you selling these motherfuckers. So you're just going to sell them up until 11:59 p.m. on the day of or something? Like, you're fucking assholes. So then the government reacted and was like, fuck that. It's in place now. So he immediately, which I agree. I like that. That's fine. All of this should have happened a long time ago. Joe Biden just found out about AI right now. But it's happened a long time ago. A lot of this is coming from Obama. They're saying that Obama essentially went up in the White House and like told them what to do, which I'm okay with because I mean Joe's not good at any of this stuff, and I'm not sure he even understands it. Kamala Harris is not going to be good at it either.
I think it's important for everybody to listen to all points of view, regardless, right?
They don't have a point of view. They're ignorant people on this. Obama probably understands it way more than any of that crew. He goes to Silicon Valley, hangs out with these Silicon Valley people, so they're telling him stuff. He's probably getting influenced, but at least he has a concept of what's going on. Joe Biden doesn't know which direction to face and all this stuff. Like, he cannot solve AI, and they're just giving it to Kamala to like raise her stature or whatever in the administration. She doesn't know anything about AI. She's a fucking lawyer. It's ridiculous. You know, I'm actually glad that Obama came in to do some of this. I mean, because they're not going to like ask the Republicans, so this is like Obama thing. But then now, when the Republicans come, they can change it because it's just an executive.
Yes to some of what you said, no to some other points. But I think fundamentally, yeah, the biggest problem is this is only an executive order. Though the executive order itself does call on Congress to take certain actions. That is what's required in this situation. And I think probably of all of the topics that we're talking about this week, this is the most far-reaching, the one with the potential for greatest impact. I mean, AI is a sea change in terms of technology, in terms of society. It is something we need to be focused on. And you're right, I don't think we've had enough focus on it yet. This is a first step. It's a good first step. This is what you sort of expect from most sort of first steps in terms of executive actions. It is calling on agencies to do research, come back with more information, think about this critically, figure out how you integrate it, what are your concerns about the future. This is really setting the stage for doing something as a next step, right? This is not really action. This is setting the stage for action. It's calling for, well, so I think it's only fire and forget.
Hope that works out.
It's fire and forget if you don't actually listen to the things that come back. But there are real things required of agencies in order to move. There are real requirements placed on agencies to go out and do research and come up with things. And so if that stuff happens, if you follow up, if you make sure that that stuff happens, it's not a fire and forget. I think it's still too soon to say whether that would be the case. I think you've got folks who are paying attention to this. I think the executive order itself, as broad and wide-reaching as it is clear as you kind of look at it that they have been speaking to a whole lot of people, that this is the result of efforts by a broad group of people with a broad group of concerns and interests. I think that that is good because I think, like you said, we were way behind the eight ball on this. I do not think we're where we need to be. We are not the overall leader. We do not have the most, the best understanding of this or, the best regulation in the world. We're not thinking about how to integrate it effectively. And so I think hopefully this starts to put us on track. And you see that we're not the only people doing this, right? This is at the same time that the G7 and the EU are also discussing this issue. In the same week, you're getting additional resolutions and discussions from those organizations. Obviously, that timing is probably intentional, but it's because I think people are waking up and realizing, and they shouldn't have woken up because of ChatGPT a year ago. Folks should have realized a long time ago that this thing is important and it's real and we need to be paying attention to it. But I'm glad that we are now, and I hope that agencies are actually their feet are held to the fire to make sure that the things in this are done.
The White House did not go talk to all these experts and stuff because the experts are so smart and know so much on technology. Like, it's just going to go in one ear and out the other anyway. What they did was Obama walked right in and he was like, my buddies in Silicon Valley want this. And they were like, okay, what's Biden going to say? No. Like, he's trying to be his friend and everything. Biden has no clue anyway. So this is just like straight from Obama. And it's a little weird since he's a former president. He's unofficially writing this stuff. But, we're in tough situations, so I'm okay with it. But like, former presidents aren't supposed to be doing this really. But our president is senile. So we got what we got.
So I don't know. For me, I fundamentally disagree with that take. I do not agree that this is just Obama walking into the White House and regurgitating information that somebody sits down and writes, and then here we have an executive order. I do think that this is the work. And even if you look at it, this does not look like it was the regurgitation of one person's positions on all these things. It hit a broad swath of different activities, different concerns across a variety of different issue sets. And it reads as if this was the work of many, many people.
Silicon Valley plus the equity
people. But I hope that Silicon Valley is involved in this, right? I do hope that industry is involved in this. One of the problems we're running into, and this is where those two kind of come together, the NVIDIA thing and this executive order really pull together in that this is totally different from what we've done in the past, right? Even the last sort of sea change technology for us, the internet, was originally a government program. This was something that was primarily funded, run, managed by the government, and then it was pushed into the private sector. So the government had a strong hand in how all of that stuff happened. The internet.
Internet. You're talking about ARPANET. That was government funding with universities. The government started the internet because they wanted to be able to launch nuclear missiles all over the world when nuclear war happened. And they got these universities to create this internet thing. And but like the government was like, oh, this internet will be a great idea. We'll send each other emails and we'll buy stuff online. No, that wasn't what happened.
No, absolutely not, John. But I think you're missing my point in this. What I'm saying is previous sea change technologies, things like space travel, things like the internet, things that that were huge. These were the result of government programs. We had a great deal of control as the US government in the initial stages of these technologies, how they were developed and where they went. Then we turned them over to the private sector. That is a totally different model than the one we're operating with right now. We are operating in this model where the private sector has all the control, and now the government needs to step in and figure out how to put that stuff into a box to control it for our own national interests and to try to advance US concerns, protect the interests of US personnel, US citizens, etc. And I think that's what you see happening right now.
It's a corporate power grab. Dude, come on.
But I do think industry has the knowledge, so they do need to be a part of this. But this shouldn't be an industry thing. And I'm not saying that we should not have industry doing development. Maybe that's a much better model for us. But I think we had much more control, positive control as a nation over the way that these things progressed in their infancy with previous big human change level.
Come on. Okay, so NASA was a failure. Look at NASA. They just got shut down. Yeah, during the moonshot and everything, when everybody was all juiced up and they were
that's
the
what
budget
I'm
was
talking
10x. But NASA's been a failure. They've been bloated. They've wasted tons of money. They've done little progress. They basically had to shut it down. They shut the space shuttle down. They had all those accidents like the Challenger, Columbia disaster and stuff like that. Yes, they've done some amazing stuff, but like the government has boxed out private, like Elon Musk. And Elon Musk, when he came in for SpaceX, had to claw his way in there. And everybody did everything to stop him because all these old military guys didn't want this hotshot entrepreneur guy in there because they knew he'd probably do it. If they didn't think he wouldn't do it, they would just let him try, fail, and then they don't have to worry about him anymore.
I think we're saying the same thing. I am saying that the infancy of these technologies was held and was done effectively. That development was done effectively by the US government. You had things like space travel where the US government picked up the moonshot, did that first piece, did it really well, and had control over the trajectory of this technology and made sure that it was done in the interests of the US, global interests of the US, right? I think that that was an effective mechanism. Did stuff fall apart thereafter? Was that a perfect system for the long term? Not exactly. So what can we do with that? We can turn it over to industry at that point to move with it. That's the same thing that happened with the internet. You can use many things.
It had to be clawed out of there.
You've got things as big as SpaceX and as small as mattresses that are coming out of technology developed by the U.S. government. You've got global satellites mapping that have helped Google, that have helped Elon Musk. All these things are government technologies that then move into the private sector. But our ability to control the initial trajectory of that was important. My point is, on this one, the U.S. government doesn't have that right now. So I think to some degree, there's a scramble to figure out how we grab control of this. And it's clear that we don't have control of it because you look at NVIDIA and they're selling stuff to the Chinese at rapid pace because they're going to be blocked from doing it. Clearly understanding that's against the general sentiment of the regulation that has been put around them, but they're working toward their own financial interests exclusively in that situation. And I think that we got to figure out how to deal with that. That's a dynamic that we're not accustomed to for technologies like these. And I think this is pushing in that direction. Is it everything we need? Absolutely not. I think even within the EO, it says that we need more and calls on Congress to take action. That's where real regulation is going to happen. That's what actually needs to happen here. Congress needs to step in and take action. But you've got people who don't understand what's going on. Just as you're saying, maybe Joe Biden doesn't understand this fully. And I wouldn't expect anybody. I wouldn't expect Joe Biden to understand this fully. I wouldn't expect anybody to understand this fully, right? You can get paid literally millions of dollars to be working in Silicon Valley, to be developing this technology, or you can be with the U.S. government. So we've got to reach out to industry. We've got to reach out to experts. They have to be at the table. And what you want is somebody who can digest the information that they're giving them and kind of make sense of it in a way that you can use to build policy.
With the hypersonics, we had another classified hypersonic test that did not occur from Cape Canaveral. And there were previous tests of hypersonic missile in March and September this year also did not occur. The Chinese are testing hypersonic missiles like mad. And I'm sure some of theirs blow up and stuff. Ours is concerning because it's not like the missile's blowing up. Like Elon Musk's missiles, at least they blow up spectacularly. Ours are just not even like firing out or something. And then they give us this bullshit like, oh, we gathered valuable ground data or something. You could do that with a simulation. You're obviously failing. They use classification to cover up their failures, protect these programs. Everyone knows that it's happening. Failing program, classify it, fudge it all up, whatever, keep it going, just keep it going. Because then the checks keep coming,
I think that it is a problem if we're not making progress as rapidly as the Chinese. But I would also say that it's important to remember that, something not working is not a complete failure. You do learn from mistakes and issues.
3 times in 1 year?
That is true. That is true. But that, like what you're saying, 3 times in 1 year, not being able to launch this when it appears that the Chinese are capable of accomplishing that, that's the problem. I think that's the thing to focus in on. Hopefully we are learning learning this. The classification presents another problem to the American public from understanding, this issue. Like, what is the problem? How much are they learning? Are they really learning, right? I would like to hope that they are learning what the problems are and they're iterating toward a solution. But again, that's unclear to us because obviously these are highly classified programs. I think regardless, you can say objectively that if the Chinese are making progress and are capable of launching these things at a regular clip and we are incapable of even launching one, we've got a big problem. That is a gap that we need to recover. It's tough to say what exactly to do about that, and it's tough to say what that means, but it's definitely a problem and we need to do something.
Yeah, well, it's definitely a gap because they had a successful hypersonic missile test that went around the world twice and disengaged some kind of payload from it in flight, which we didn't think that was possible. And even Milley admitted it. The fact that we can't do this and they can do that is shocking. And this is the beginning of us not having the most powerful military in the world. And this is the beginning of the failures of all these people coming home to roost, is that we do not have the weapons that we need in the time that we need them and for the price that they should be made for. And the system's bloated. And this is a failure of the contractors, senior officers, and civilians in the military, especially in these R&D programs. They're all bloated, and they're just like these waterfall, never-ending aerospace programs. And they just funnel money into them. These are the most expensive programs and weapon system programs in the entire government that we spend most of our money on. And then we spend a lot of money on salaries.
So they probably should be the most expensive programs in the government. Yeah. However, there shouldn't be waste. We shouldn't be wasting money on them the way that we are. We should be making better progress. But they're big and challenging problems. And so, of course, we should be spending a lot of money trying to solve these big, incredible problems that do lead to our ability to be dominant military in the world.
The structure is fucked up. It's led by some dumbass officer who doesn't know how to do startup, doesn't know how to do innovation, doesn't know iteration, doesn't know how to do things like Elon Musk does, because he went to the Air Force Academy and Elon Musk went someplace else to study, computer science or Queen's College. I just read his biography, or King's College. Close. And so the Chinese are making progress. They put out these things talking about these new technologies they're developing. I understand they have propaganda. I understand they want to make themselves look good and advance vis-a-vis us and stuff like that. But on this hypersonic shit, that hypersonic missile that went around the world, they've obviously got something going here. Okay, this isn't all bullshit. And the fact that they're coming out and putting up, just out on the internet, they've got this new hypersonic thermal outer coating material, which is going to allow the missiles to go much faster because the heat buildup is one of the big problems. And they've successfully tested it, not on a missile, but probably in a kiln or something where they fired it. But I remember reading an article about this maybe last year where they had come up with it. Theoretically, they developed this new thermal hypersonic shit, and now they're testing it. And yeah, it might be bullshit, I get, but they don't get that much benefit off of just spouting off all this bullshit, because eventually it'll be like paper tigers, like in Russia. They're saying that now they also have another technology called hypersonic detonation wave engine, which allows them to spend 80% less on their drone engines and fuels. That's moving closer to deployment. So they're iterating and making these new technologies. We're getting the F-35. We're getting these bloated programs that we get the fucking hypersonic missiles that won't take off 3 times in a row, and nobody gets fired. And the checks still keep getting paid. And if Elon Musk was there, he'd have your fucking ass, and you would be at the fucking office until midnight, or you'd be flying out to the Polynesian Islands and back with aircraft parts in your carry-on bag or something. Because that's how entrepreneurs do it. And these people in charge are not entrepreneurs. They are not tough. They are not tenacious, and they don't have what it takes. They don't have the grit.
Fundamental point. I think I'm going to agree with you. I am not going to sign on to the fact that Elon Musk should be running these programs.
People like
he's
Elon.
He's done some pretty amazing things.
People like him.
I'm not looking at him as the Messiah. I don't think that guy is going to solve all our problems, but I do think he has done some pretty amazing things. I do think he has seen critical things that that humans need to be paying attention to. The fact that he has realized we may need to get off this planet. The fact that he has realized we are destroying the environment. The fact that he has realized we need, electronic vehicles. The battery technology is critical. These are amazing things. He's a visionary in that way. I'm not going to sign on as that he's the Messiah and he should be running everything for us, building our hypersonic propulsion technologies. But maybe he'd do a good job. Who knows?
He's an entrepreneur. We need entrepreneurs. The system is set up to block entrepreneurs, to block nonconformists. And we used to block all kinds of other people. Try getting a government contract in the 50s if you didn't look like us. You know what I'm saying? This system is fucked, and it's always been fucked, and it's still fucked, and our generation has to fix it. We can't hand this off.
That's what I will sign on to. I do think that we have structural problems in the way that the government operates on these things, and that's stuff that I think most people agree should be addressed. And as you say, probably almost everybody, except for the people doing it right now, who think things are working just fine because it's great for them. I do think we should be bringing in innovators. We should be bringing in people who can do things in a different way. We should be working with people who are lean and mean in their operations. Also realizing that, right, the U.S. government has hindrances that the private sector doesn't have. So I think, in the same way that in the last thing we were talking about, artificial intelligence, there are challenges in relying on the private sector to be the point of the spear on development of artificial intelligence. There are challenges on having the US government be the point of the spear on all of this stuff. Higher tolerance for failure, I guess, a lower tolerance in some ways for like loss of life and other things. It's a balancing act across these things. I do think, as you say, if this is real, which it may not be real, right? This could possibly be Chinese propaganda designed to push us in the wrong direction and to be trying to invest money in developing a technology that they're also struggling with or that they've realized is not possible. But assuming that it's true, let's just take it at face value for now. This is hugely concerning and hugely problematic that the US is lagging this far behind in what could be a technology that sort of changes the way that we're able to conduct war and the pace
of lagging. We lost it. And we gave it away. We practically gave this technology away. We could have developed this technology 20 fucking years ago, but nobody wanted to do it because nobody had the foresight that Russia and China and everyone would get it. And they just didn't want to do it. And they weren't ready to do it or whatever. But the government and the system that you love so much has sold us the fuck out. They didn't deliver these missiles. We had an advantage over these people and we lost it. And people are going to die because if we get into a fight because they shouldn't be where they're at. And we shouldn't be where we're at.
Again, I would hesitate to say that we know exactly where they are. But fundamentally, I kind of agree with you, and I probably make the same point about the system that has been made many times in the past. It's not perfect, but it's the best that we have.
I know a lot of people in the government, and some people have that. Just like, let's do with what we got. I'm just not that way.
So I don't think we should do with what we have. I think improvements are important. I also think instead of just casting stones at it, right, we should come up with actionable ways to improve the situation we're in. And I don't think just tearing it down is the answer. I think broadly, stepping back, 10,000 foot view, things function and operate. There are a lot of problems. There's a lot of dysfunction. There's a lot of waste. Those things should be targeted and fixed. But I think if you step back, most organizations are broadly doing what they're designed to do.
I don't know, man. I just don't really see that. I mean, I think there's some good, there's a lot of bad, but the whole force needs to be realigned. First off, officers need to go. Everybody needs to be the same pay grade. If the person needs education, pay for them to get an education. Select leaders. Everyone needs to be older. You shouldn't be able to be in the military when you're 18. You should have to be 20 or 21. The reason why they take these young kids is because they can pay them nothing. And they'll just do whatever they're told because they're so young. People a little bit older, a little bit more education, people that are going to be in it longer. They need to have technology skills. We need to be focused on technology. We need to have less of these large formations of humans and more and more and more of these robots. And we need to push that as fast as possible. And I used to work in the Pentagon in the joint artificial bullshit, and that shit wasn't working. Those officers wasted so much time. It was a waste of time. It was a waste of money. There's no one that I see. There's this guy, Craig Martell, who's the chief data and artificial intelligence officer. If anybody can do it, it's going to have to be this guy and his deputy, Stephanie. We'll see. I mean, they seem to be doing a pretty good job, but we have to give them some time. But I don't have any confidence in any of these officers or any of these people to do anything right about technology. I've never seen any of these people do anything right, except for you.
Craig Martell, I don't know. Thank you. In terms of Craig Martell, I don't know him, but I think everything else you said, I agree with 100%. No notes. You said it.
He's the civilian they brought in. He was like AI, not coder, but manager, like a little bit older manager guy, Dropbox and some other companies. And so he understands how to set the conditions to let these data science teams work, which these other people had no clue about. Would be a scandal, but it's classified, obviously. So a bunch of people wasting money. And I also say that no military officer has ever been successful without NCOs around. You start an organization with no NCOs in it, that's what you're going to get. Your organization basically just got absorbed by something else because it's a fucking joke. All right, so that was the last article. Very interesting discussion with Chuck Charles. It was good seeing you. It was doing our first video together. Hopefully many more. Get going the 4-person discussion group and everything. Probably have to cut the topics down so we have time for everybody to talk. It's been great.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's been great. I want to say thank you, John, for having me. This was great. Lively discussion, as you said. Don't agree on everything, but I think that's important. Differing viewpoints are what matters and gets us to the best solution in the end. I appreciate what you're doing here, talking to people with a bunch of viewpoints, talking about issues that you care about. I think it's important that you see kind of everybody out there engaged. That's how you make change. That's how you get the progress that you're saying you want. The change that you're saying you want is by speaking out and saying you want that to happen, right? Be vocal. And so thanks for doing this. Thanks for having me. This was great. It's always good to work with you.
Awesome. Me too. Working with veterans, we're doing this veteran thing. So let's get more veterans, get veteran voices. I've been thinking about it too, but I also want to provide positive veteran images out there. It doesn't just have to be like, I was in all these wars or this and that. We've got a lot of veterans that have had good success after military and everything like that, are good examples for young people. That's important too. So we don't dwell on bad stuff that happens. So keep going and see you next time. So thanks a lot for watching. Goodbye.